Joshua, in his farewell address, not only reminded Israel that Yahweh was a promise-keeping God, he also delivered a strong warning about what would happen if their heart strayed from Yahweh. This was a very real danger because there was still false deity-worshipping people living inside and around the Promised Land. It was as if two worlds collided in the Promised Land, and Israel could not live in both. They could not have one part of their heart invested in the customs of the previous inhabitants of the land, and part of their heart devoted to the promise-keeping God who had divinely led them there. Israel had to choose one world to live in, one God to worship, one king to pledge their loyalty to. Joshua warned them of their fate if they tried to live in two worlds. The Lord will bring on you all the evil he has threatened until he has destroyed you from this good land he has given you. The Lord's anger will burn against you, and you will quickly perish from the good land he has given you. The privilege of living in the Promised Land was conditional. Israel did not own the Promised Land. God had given Israel the Promised Land, and they were to be responsible tenants of this good land which flowed with milk and honey. If Israel obeyed God, if they were faithful to his good laws for them, then they would stay in the Promised Land. Their harvest would be abundant, their flocks and herds would multiply, and their offspring would outnumber the stars of the sky. But if they disobeyed, if they were unfaithful and chased after other gods, then they would, as Joshua warned, quickly perish from the good land. And as Moses had forewarned before this, they would be exiled from the land. Israel dwelled in the Promised Land conditionally. Israel could be forced to leave the land. And any place that we can be forced to leave is not home. At least not our true eternal home. One of the defining characteristics of being home is knowing you're in a place where you can stay forever. No law or power, no threat or invasion of the enemy, no natural disaster, no fear or failure can force you to leave. Unconditional, permanent residence is an intrinsic quality of being home. The Promised Land was a special land. It was a good land. It was the divine blessing of an earthly home. But it was a conditional home. And so the Promised Land was never intended to be our eternal home, nor to satisfy our deepest longing. Our souls are intended to long for paradise, for Eden, for that garden in the east, for God's presence, for our true home.